Okay, good.
Hello, this is Pushing Boundaries, a podcast about pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, and unconventional ideas. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas R. Lüning. My guest today is Stephen Gyllenhaal, film and television director, writer, and producer. His producing credits include Shattered Mind, about a woman with dissociative identity disorder, and the feature documentaries Exquisite Continent and Dream Interpretation, and In Utero about prenatal psychology, which is how we actually met, Stephen and I, when he interviewed me for In Utero. Stephen is also a published poet. Among his other credits is being the father of actress Maggie Gyllenhaal and actor Jake Gyllenhaal. A few years ago, he made a big career pivot, as they say nowadays, and founded the Identity Development Institute in Los Angeles, which provides a novel form of psychotherapy initiated by Franz Rupert. And I definitely want to talk about that. One more thing about Stephen that's kind of interesting. He's of Swedish and English descent. Through his father, he's a member of the Gyllenhaal family, descendant of the cavalry officer Nils Gunnarsson Hall, who was ennobled in 1652. That's even before I was born, by Queen Christina of Sweden, who conferred upon him the crest and family name Gyllenhaal. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, thank you. So I can tell you a little more
Yes,
about that story.
sure.
So my father told me
Yeah,
that that it really the reason why my great 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 grandfather or whatever it was, whoever it
yeah, yeah,
was ennobled, as you said. I like that
yes,
term, because he wrote a book on butterflies.
yeah.
And the king loved that book of butterflies. It was illustrated book of butterflies. That's the reason he was made a noble. And he talked about that. Jake talked about it actually because he'd heard the story on a
Yeah.
some talk show, and he was told that it had been researched and it was actually a book on insects rather than butterflies. But I like the story that it was butterflies. My father, the whole idea of transformation, the whole idea that we
Yes.
start as a
Yes.
caterpillar and we end as a butterfly, and that was, I think, my father's hope for me and my brothers and sisters. I have 5 younger brothers and sisters, and certainly it's worked out that way more or less.
Yeah.
Um, so
So,
so that's a
yeah.
little more about that story.
Okay. Okay. So, how did you? Let's start with your sort of major career, filmmaking. How did you get into that?
Well, I think to keep it in sort of the terrain of psychology, which is something that's very important to both you and I, and
Okay.
psychiatry.
Yes.
I grew up in a very religious town, and some people might call it cult. Um, I'm not totally comfortable with that term, but people have called it that. It was very religious, and I, my parents were also alcoholics, and struggled a lot, and had 6 kids altogether. My father was also in World War II, and in fact was with Patton's Fourth Armored Division,
Mm.
and freed the concentration camps. So he saw the horrors of war on all different fronts, and I think um, uh, struggled. He struggled. My mother struggled, and so as a consequence, I struggled with what's life about, and I was being told these things about heaven and hell and angels and devils, and I began to think, kind of quietly, that I was crazy, that I was nuts. And I luckily went away to college because I was desperate, frankly, to get out of the town.
Mm-hmm.
And in college, I struggled and still thought I was crazy because so many of the kids there were sort of preppy kids, and I was this weird religious kid.
Which college was it?
Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, one of the small Ivies, a very good school. I was very
Yeah.
lucky. I was very much into athletics, and
Mm-hmm.
it was part of how I got in.
Right.
Um, and and struggled. And then there were drugs and alcohol, and then discovering sex and life and all the things that you discover in college.
Right.
So I
Right.
continued to think
Yeah.
I was pretty crazy
Yeah.
until one day had a girlfriend
Yeah.
who knew about movies. I knew nothing about movies. I grew up with no sense of movies at all. And there was a wonderful movie theater on campus, and I started to see movies. I saw Ingmar Bergman, Fellini, Rossellini,
Yes.
and all of a sudden I went, I am not crazy. These people are speaking to me. And one day I went, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And having no idea what it meant, having no idea how to make a movie at Trinity, where there was no film department at all, I just went sort of the way, you and I talked about this earlier about, what drives you. I was driven to make movies. And I talked some of the rich kids in school to give me a little money to shoot an 8mm film. I then hitchhiked down to Yale University, which was just in New Haven, just south of where we were, which was Hartford. Pretended I was a Yale student and used all their equipment, borrowed equipment from Wesleyan and the 16mm equipment, and shot footage there. And just whatever it took, I was going to make movies because it made me feel sane. And it started me really on a journey towards sanity. And in fact, at that point in college, as I began to make films, I went to my first therapist, Dr. George Higgins, who is a counselor there. And it really was a marriage between filmmaking and what filmmaking allowed you, and therapy, which I had never even thought was a possibility, to open up and start talking about what was really going on inside. Begin to explore where therapy was in 1972, which was, of course, sort of still Freudian, still, and particularly it hadn't trickled down, and was nowhere near where it is today.
Right.
But there was dreams, there were all these things that were not unlike cinema, and so I began to move forward in my life, thanks to both of those, thanks to great filmmakers who were very brave, and such a, Fellini, Lestrada,
Yes.
The Godfather, then later, all these movies,
Yes.
Bertolucci,
Yes.
and so much also spoken about that was a response to World War II and the horrors of the war and the bewilderment of the war. So the two of them came together very much for me, and pretty much all the way through my career, even though there were only certain movies that you might call psychological movies, everything was always the exploration of psychology and character, psychology and what is driving somebody. And that's so much the meat, the main course of what really good filmmaking is about, is what makes us tick. And what are the consequences when we tick in a certain way, what happens when we tick in a different way. And so it was, I had a field day for years and years and years. And along the way, I had one therapist. By the end, I had probably 40 therapists. I went through so many therapists. I did, yeah, it's about 30 therapists. Because I was in Hartford, Connecticut, then I was in New York, and worked in New York for a while. Then I came to LA and had therapists there, and psychoanalysis and object relations and post-Freudian, and then began to get involved with almost every form of therapy that really informed both my own sanity and also my work, the filmmaking.
So how does one become like a film director? How did you get from like being a nobody to actually being told that, yes, here is, I don't know, $10 million, make a film? How does one jump into that?
I think there are about as many ways as there are film directors.
Uh-huh.
And I think in terms of what happened with me, it was a lot about story. I said some fascination with story. I wasn't a great writer. I wrote a lot over the years. It was never my strong suit in a lot of ways as writing. It was much more directing, a hands-on kind of ability that I had. I was an athlete, in high school, and a little bit in college. And I think that just getting your hands dirty, being tough, is a piece of what being a director is. The first movie I made was called Exit 10. It was based on a Catherine Mansfield short story. I actually went to the library trying to find a short story because Alfred Hitchcock, I had read, said, don't make movies about novels, that's impossible. Find a short story, that's the structure of a movie. And he's right, I think. movies are really short stories. And nowadays with television and series, now the novel form has really come into cinema, has really come into television in a way that it couldn't really do when it was movies. You always had to truncate whatever a novel was when you were making a movie. So my first movie, which was a short, was based on this Catherine Mansfield short story, and I rewrote it. It was based in the I guess around the turn of the 20th century, and I updated it and shifted things around and used that structure, and cast the movie in New York. I was terrified to cast. I didn't know what I was doing. I had gone to college. One of my girlfriends was an actress, but I didn't fit in with the actors at all. So I sort of didn't know what to do. And the first time I went out to cast, I was terrified. I went out to, who am I going to find to cast? What do I do? What do I say to actors? What happened?
Yeah.
And the psychology helped. By then I had a little psychology, so I was more open to talking about feelings in a way that I wouldn't have been when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And then, then luck or something that's either you sort of have it or you don't, but I think that's not entirely true. And that first half-hour film I made was shortlisted for Academy Awards. And from there, I ultimately went to LA. Terrified of LA also, terrified of, you have to deal with your terror.
Yes.
It's a piece of what it is. You go, I don't belong here. I mean, the first time I drove into the MGM studio lot, I went, I do not belong here. I'm a kid from the hills of Pennsylvania. This is like where all these musicals were made. This is like a holy mackerel. But you go in, your heart's beating away like this, and you walk in and you somehow get through the meeting, and you don't get the first 5 or 6 jobs, and after a while you get more and more comfortable. And so then I did some TV, some after-school specials, some kids movies. I was unemployed for a while. I became a handyman for a while. When Maggie was 3 or 4 years old and Jake was born, I couldn't get a job. So I looked young.
Yes. And
I went around. We had a nice house in an area called Hancock Park, and when I painted houses to get through college, and I went around one block over from my house and said, I'm a handyman. And I worked as a handyman for a bunch of months, actually for quite a while. And then at the same time, I was negotiating with Disney to run their TV department, which I would have been terrible at. But I had done enough TV shows so I was literally wearing jeans and a t-shirt splattered with paint. I would drop my kids off at a very high-end school, which is where they were going. And then I would change into fancy clothes, go to Disney. By then I wasn't so scared of the studios. And negotiate with a guy named Tom, I forget his last name now, who was running Disney to run their TV department. And we'd talk it through, and then I'd get back in my car, and I'd change back into my clothes, and I'd go in, I'd fix a toilet, or I would fix this, or fix that. And I was working for this one woman at one point who, and I never told anyone, because usually in Hollywood, all these people, nowadays they'll come to me and they say, look, I know I'm fixing your furnace, but I'm also a writer. Can I send you my script? So I never told anyone I worked in the movie business at that point. I just went, I'm a handyman, that's all I am. So this woman had me, she was from, her son had sent over this beautiful cabinet from Italy, and I was to fit it into her living room, and I was the wrong person to do this job. My carpentry work is mezza, passable, So I'm sitting here cutting 45-degree angles, trying to make this work. I am going to ruin this thing. And I get a call from someone, we just picked up your TV show. We picked up the script that you've been developing. You have to start production in 3 days. And I turned to the lady and I said, I didn't tell you this, but actually I am a director and a producer, and I have to get someone else to do the job. Thank God for her. And she said, I knew it. I knew you were something else was going on here. So I didn't hide it very well. And off I went. And that movie was, actually that's a funny story too. And that movie was called Help Wanted. And it was about a father who lost his job and what happened to the family and all those kinds of things. Anyway, got nominated for an Emmy. And I flew to New York with Maggie, who was around 7 at the time. Mm-hmm. And she got this fancy dress that she got, we got a dress for her to wear to the Emmys. And she was very excited, so we sat at a table, and and they were talking about the awards, and up came, and now nominated for Best Children's Show, 19 whatever it was, to name it, help wanted. Oh daddy, daddy. And someone else won, and she burst into tears, just started weeping. And that was the first moment Hollywood fell in love with Maggie, because the whole place just fell in love with her for her crying about that. So but then that, I was winning awards, and slowly it went, you move up. It's a process. It's, you make mistakes, you figure it out, you keep going.
Yeah.
And so that's how I more or less got into the business.
So was Shattered Mind the first movie that was, really sort of underpinned by psychology?
No, I would say almost everything was. Not everything, but for instance, Shattered Mind was much later on.
Yeah.
I did Family of Spies, which is a really interesting story, true story about a Navy officer who basically manipulated his family into spying with him and destroyed the family completely. Was about one of the characters, played by Leslie Ann Warren, was an alcoholic. I knew all about mothers who were alcoholics, the whole psychology of that, so that played very big in all of it. I rewrote parts of it a little bit to be a little bit more precise about what happens when you have a dysfunctional criminal as a father, how complicated that is even, not to overjudge him, but to make him a three-dimensional character. But he was crazy. He ultimately went to jail. His oldest son, who he manipulated, also went to jail for life, the two of them. The family was destroyed. Then I made another movie called Killing a Small Town, which was nominated for all the Emmys when it came. Also, Family of Spies was nominated for a bunch of Emmys. And then the next thing I did was called Killing a Small Town with Barbara Hershey, and that was about an axe murderer. But it was about she got off ultimately with a lawyer played by Brian Dennehy. They all got nominated for Emmys at that point. And it was all about what triggered her to kill with an axe this woman, and it was all about psychology. There was a psychiatrist played by Hal Holbrook, actually, and we shot it. I was always I shot like crazy when I was young. It's 20-hour days. The crews hated me. I would just go through money, just going to try and get the thing as right as I could. The line producer on Killing a Small Town opened up a briefcase and had a pistol inside of it and said, no more film. And I just went, okay. And then I got more film. So, but anyway, we ended up shooting Hal Holbrook at 3:00 in the morning. His stomach was growling so bad, we couldn't shoot. So we had to find someone go out to find. He said, you got to get me saltines. If you give me saltines, it'll go away. So we were driving around in the middle of Dallas, Texas, trying to find someone finally found a 7-Eleven, came back with the crackers, and he ate them, and we were able to shoot this scene. So Hal was the therapist in the scene who helped understand. Well, I think it's really important. Helped understand what really causes criminal behavior. My position on all of these things increasingly is, jail is not the solution. Jail is, demonizing people who have these. You start looking at the neurobiology, you start looking at the psychology, you start looking at the trauma that happened to anyone who's a criminal, and it becomes more and more difficult to judge them. It's if they're, but for me, is really real. So much about trauma now is just making clear that. So that was about really the fact that it was a horrible murder, which of course played really well on television. It was like whatever. But ultimately, it was about a much deeper subject, which was she was an innocent on the deepest level, and so that was they were all pretty much psychological. I mean, I think, and I did some garbage. I used to shoot some things, for money, action scenes where you blow things up and you have backlight and you have 3 cameras and you tell the stuntman not to go too wild, and then and you whatever. So I did one. It was 3 for them, 1 for me. That was the thing. 3 for them, 3 for what the studio wants, 1 for me.
So what triggered your interest in prenatal psychology to make the In Utero film?
So what happened was I had been married. Maggie and Jake were my kids from that. Ultimately, my wife and I divorced. We were really going separate ways. Part of that had to do with the fact that my work in psychology was really moving me in a very different direction from where she was going, and I think we finally we parted ways, although we're still good friends. I then fell in love with Kathleen and got married a second time, and I don't think I could have been with someone who didn't have a child, because the children for me is just so deeply ingrained in what matters to me. I mean, I love pets. Pets are wonderful. I had tons of pets, but it's not a child. So she was having problems having a child, and so we were sort of struggling with it, and decided, hey, why not make a documentary? We're in this privileged position, and it's a very privileged position I have lived in. I may have grown up in a weird way in a cult and all that kind of stuff. I'm still a white guy. I still got an education, and it makes it a whole lot easier, particularly the United States, which is a profoundly racist country. I don't care what anyone says. And that was what Losing Isaiah was about, the movie Losing Isaiah. I learned really how really racist we are, whether we want to be or not. So I had a lot of privilege, and I had the privilege at that point of saying, let's make a documentary about how does pregnancy work? We need to understand the science around pregnancy. We need to talk to the top people in the world, of which you were one of them. And so we made that movie, and in the process of that, learned enough, and Kathleen got pregnant, and Luke, who's now almost 8 years old, and is, as I said to you, he wants to be a mathematician, maybe an actor, which is probably his strong suit, all in all, but a mathematician or maybe a basketball player. He's into those things. Right. He's a little short for basketball, but he's got the goods to be an actor. Who knows what he's going to do? I never really controlled my kids. They do what they want, and celebrate whatever it is.
Yeah. So then let's talk then about your most recent sort of career choice, Franz Rupert and the Identity Development Institute. How did you get involved with that? And
well,
what is that all about?
So what happened was we made In Utero, which was all about the science, from conception through birth, but a little bit further sometimes, a little bit of perinatal stuff as well. But mainly it's about the pregnancy period of time. And we were in Europe, actually on vacation in Paris, but we were also marketing the film around the world, and we got a call from some people in Amsterdam who said, your movie and the science in it has captured exactly what our psychological work is uncovering. This was 2016, well before so much neurobiology has really shifted our perspective, particularly on pregnancy. So it was very early on in all that process, and I think In Utero was ahead of its time, only because we really did get people like you, Gabor Mate, and a lot of other, Catherine Monk, some great people who really have been leading the way to how critical pregnancy was. So they said, this psychological work that we're doing absolutely is captured by your film, and we're using your film, and we would like it if you'd come to Amsterdam. I'd never been to Amsterdam, and be a part of a panel, and we're going to show the film, and you'll have fun. So we went to Amsterdam, which was fabulous, and I kind of thought, okay, this is a little strange, this whole idea, which was human beings can sense other human beings on a very nuanced and deep level, called resonating. And if you have this method, which I then later learned, you can pick up incredible details about the trauma in their lives. This is before trauma was really even being discussed. 2015, it was 2016. And I went, a little crazy, maybe, a little out there, but very nice people, really lovely people, had some wonderful meals in Amsterdam, did this panel, and I kind of went, this is intriguing, but I'd been through a whole lot of psychological stuff and kind of wanted to break from it all, and went, we'll leave it at that. We then went back to LA, and we got a call from a woman in Asia, Christine Wong, who also works with IOPT, with Franz Rupert and those people, and said, we'd like to fly to LA and interview you and Kathleen on the film, because they felt exactly the same way about the importance of prenatal development and the profound impact it has on the rest of your life, and how they'd been picking it up in therapy. So we did the interview. They had one camera and one little weird light, and I'm looking at them like a filmmaker and going, these people don't know what they're doing, whatever. When they've flown all the way from China to do this, and whatever. And then she said offhandedly, would you like to do a session? I said, "Yeah, okay, do a session." And that session changed my life.
And
Changed my life.
what happened in that session?
Well, I don't want to go too much into it.
No,
really.
just
But by that point, I had been in therapy, analysis, 12-step programs, everything, for almost 50 years, 45 years, trying to figure out, why was I a little bit crazy?
Yes.
What had happened to me? And nothing ever really got clear. I mean, it was okay. I learned to live with it. In that one session, it all became clear. And again, in a way, this is about me, of course, and I'm going to be doing more of these, and I'll get more into it. But at the moment, I just want to say that nothing had ever pulled back the curtain from my earliest time, from about 2 years old, when an event happened, 2 to 3 years old, that was the core trauma that made me shape myself in a way that made me feel crazy. I wasn't crazy. It was quite, as with anyone who's dealing with trauma, the organism is brilliant, but it sort of knocked me outside the box of normalcy. And after that, I began to take that work very seriously. I then went to Europe to train, and for the next 18 months, by then I had decided to become a therapist, by the way. By then I went, my kids are doing great. I'm getting older. It's a lot of work. At that point, I had a 2 or 3 year old. I went, I don't want to go away to Atlanta or Vancouver, or a lot of things are shot in Canada, and not be around this child. I want to be around him. So I decided to become a therapist. So I'd gone back to school to become a therapist. But when I discovered this method, I went, this is so far beyond any kind of therapy I'd had. And as I said, by then I'd had like 40 therapists that uncovered that, that I'd been molested as a child, and I had not remembered it at all. And it came up. And I didn't believe it really at first. And then over the next 2 years, 3 years, it became clearer and clearer. And then I began to go back and research where I came from. And then it got confirmed, and all because of this profound therapy. Now, we know now there's much more of that stuff that goes on than people think, but a lot of people have not had that happen to them, and the work has been really about uncovering. We've been finding in the work that I do with the Institute now. First I was trained in it, and now I do it, that almost all of us are traumatized to some degree or other. For me, there weren't that many times that it happened, so it was damaged, but not like some people are damaged. But there are so many different forms of trauma, because the organism during conception and for the first 3 years, actually, pre-verbal development, very fragile organism that can be very easily knocked off kilter, because we don't know what human beings really are. We barely understand what we are. So that's how I came to this and came to believe in it, and have come to believe in it even more. I've been very gentle about the work. I haven't pushed the Institute a lot. I've wanted to grow. We train people. We've trained maybe 20 people now. Now other people are doing the training. It's still very small. I'm in the middle of 3 or 4 different projects, all of which will kind of cross-pollinate, and I think in the next few years you're going to see, as people have seen with Gabor Mate, Wisdom of Trauma, it will be exponentially expanding, this work. So, and I'm having a great time. My life has become a miracle for me to look around and go, how in the world did I get to this place? And a lot of the therapies I did not work very well, and some of the things were really, really wrong. But all of them were with people who were trying. Mm-hmm. They may have been trying for the wrong reasons. Right. They may have gone down avenues that were wrong. But how many avenues have we all gone down that have been wrong? And now I think we're getting a clearer and clearer position about how miraculous we human beings are, but how fragile and delicate, and how easily we can really be not able to find our full selves so we can live full lives. And to me, that's...
So I watched a video of you and doing sort of therapy, I guess being the patient, if you like, at the Identity Development Institute. and you were standing in the middle and you were surrounded by a group of people. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I think you said a sentence. I don't know what the sentence was, but just a regular sentence like, how are you today, let's say. And then you selected different people to sort of be the words of the sentence. So like you said, you be how, or you be are, or you be and. And, you know, having done Gestalt therapy a long time ago, I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yes, yeah.
I have no trouble, you know, visualizing, let's say, someone in a dream being followed by someone and running away from someone. And I would say, okay, now become the person who is pursuing you, okay? But how do you become a word like are or and or how?
Well, let me. We could even play with this a little bit if you want to. But
sure.
I think. Well, let's play with it a little bit. Now I want to say maybe take 10 minutes and I'll do a little session with you.
Sure.
I think what's very important to be aware of is that I think some interesting things will happen, but this is only going to be a few minutes.
Okay.
And the depths to which this work will go, and also the things that may come up, may not come up, but may come up, are handled with much more care and time. You're a professional. So you can also call me afterwards if you want to talk it through a little bit, because sometimes it takes some time to process.
Okay.
But what I'll do is I'll instruct you sort of how this works, and then I'll explain to you why words matter.
Okay.
So what is it right now, more than anything else right now, in a sentence, a short sentence, a long sentence, it can be whatever you want. What matters to you now? What do you want to know about? What are you worried about? Just quickly, what would that sentence be?
What am I worried about?
Or what do you want to know about? Or yeah.
I want to know about how this identity development therapy works.
Okay, that's one way of going at it. But I'd almost say, and that's fine. That's fine. I would say generally I would want to know something more emotional and personal, but that's okay. But you've done that. Let's just go with that. Okay.
Okay.
Pick three words. Actually, pick 2 words out of that. 2 words.
How works.
How and works. Now, to have come up with that sentence, and to have then picked those 2 words, even though it's a short period of time, demands a tremendous amount of neurobiology, educated, knowing about words, all of those kinds of things. The intellectual acumen to take the sentence, so I'd like to know about the Institute, there's a kind of lightness to that, indicates aspects of you. So everything's kind of working. And as you know, neurobiology doesn't function on its own. It's also involving biology. So your whole organism has been participating and bringing things to the surface for me to begin to pick up, sort of like radio signals, and I'm a radio receiver, just picking up stuff right now, okay? And now the next step is find 2 objects in the room. You can be holding them if you want, or they can be around the room, and this is replacing people with an object, and I will be sort of resonating as a facilitator, because you can either do it as a group or one-on-one.
Okay.
It's a way of, they become objects that mirror an aspect of you.
Okay.
Because everything, of course, is energy. So pick 2 objects.
Okay, television set.
Okay,
well, not the television set. The computer screen.
Okay, and which word is that?
Computer.
No. So you have 2 words, how and works.
Oh yes. Okay.
Make one of the words, apply that to the computer screen. Which word?
How.
Okay. And what about works?
Microphone.
Microphone. Okay. Now you can touch them if you want. You can do whatever you want. Okay. Now what I want you to do is repeat the sentence, the whole sentence, and then when it feels right, say you're ready, and we'll start. So just repeat the sentence more or less.
The first sentence that I started.
Yeah, the sentence that, yeah.
Okay. I wonder how the identity development institute therapy works.
Okay. And then take a moment, just breathe, sit there, and then let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, now relate to the television set or the computer screen and the microphone as those words. So pick one of them and say what comes up, what feelings come up, what thoughts come up.
Pick one of the words like computer screen.
Well, no. So you're gonna relate to the computer screen as the word how. So just feel the word how and use the computer screen to be the mirror of whatever that word means for you.
Curiosity, would that be a feeling?
Oh, keep going, keep talking about it.
Just wondering, curiosity, how things work, trying to get to the bottom of things,
Okay.
trying to understand.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Just a tiny bit of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
And where do you feel that in your body if you were to
Behind
talk
my
about
behind my eyes.
behind your eyes? Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can go on with this word, or you can explore the other word a little bit.
Okay, explore the other word.
Okay, so now the microphone, and that's the other word, works, right?
I don't feel anything about the microphone. I don't have the same feeling about the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem important.
Hmm.
The computer screen is more important.
Hmm. 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 And works. Do you feel anything in your body?
At the moment, right now,
Yeah.
no.
Hmm. Now you can go wherever you want. You're the captain of this ship. I'm just the navigator. So you can go back to the other word. You can dig deeper into the word works.
Well, I think I've come up against resistance.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. With the word works, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
What does that feel like, resistance? What is it? Tell me what it feels like.
Well, feels a bit like I don't want to disappoint you. I should be performing more. I should be getting into something, right? And oh, I'm being a bad patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I sensed, as a facilitator,
Yeah.
a little bit, a hint of anger. Just a little hint of anger there. Am I right, or I may be wrong? But
I don't feel it. I don't
Okay,
feel
all right.
it. No,
Okay.
no.
all right, good. So
No.
and I'm often wrong, like we say, we're
Yeah,
often wrong about
yeah.
things.
No, I don't feel.
But resistance.
I do feel resistance. I do feel sort of responsible also, for this program.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
and I think that this is a good demonstration, and I can see how it could go in different ways. I can see how it could be productive. Um, it's a very it's a very creative way of getting into the unconscious, I think.
But we're not quite done yet. We're not
Okay,
quite done. Because I want to ask you a couple other questions.
go ahead.
If you were to describe what age you're feeling right now, what age you are, what number comes into your head? What comes into your head?
7.
7, okay. So what happened to you when you were 7? Can you remember?
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. I certainly do, and I don't want to go there.
Huh, like you don't want to go
No.
here, there's resistance,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that's very important to notice and to be aware of is that resistance saved your life.
Right.
And that being suspicious, not being sure you want to go down an alley saves your life. So I want to honor that resistance. But we're starting to see a connection between
Yes.
what you're feeling now and the little 7-year-old boy. That
Yes.
he's there with you. So I would say there's something about that, and you know it. You don't have to talk about it here, and I think it's
Yeah.
important not to,
Yes.
because this is a public forum, and
Right.
this is private work really underneath it all,
Right.
and it should be
Right.
confidential.
Yeah.
But I want you to begin to see
Yes.
what's suddenly coming up, suddenly
Uh-huh.
coming up,
Yeah.
and how you can sort of, if you had an hour or so, we can begin
Yes.
to explore it more. Usually use 3 words, and oftentimes people do this. Right now you're using objects, but people
Yes.
work just as effectively. Now, for a moment, if you want to,
Yeah.
let's go back to the first word and see what's happened now.
How?
Hmm.
And what do you want me to do with it?
Whatever's going on with you, you're a miraculous organism, and just be with yourself.
Well, a lot of things are coming up, and once again, it's a public forum, and I'm really not.
Totally understand, and I'm glad, and I
Yeah.
think it's one of the things I'm learning, because this is one of the things I do with people.
Yeah.
Now, when I've done some of these, is I do these sessions a little bit, and I need to be careful,
Yeah.
because it's very, very powerful.
It
I think the
is.
one thing, very, very powerful, very powerful.
It is.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
It is amazing. Well, thank you for introducing me to this,
Yeah, yeah.
and let's talk about this some more. When we are off the air.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I would just end with is, in terms of what this is the recognizing the sadness, recognizing the sadness, and recognizing the resistance,
Yes.
and to explore that, because what this also does, and what I want to just do right now, is just quickly say out loud, I release myself from these 2 objects, being these words.
I release myself from these 2 objects and all that goes with it. Yes.
Yes, that's right. That's good. That's good. So I think what you see right away is in 10 minutes, 5,
Yes.
10 minutes,
Yes.
profoundly counterintuitive but raw, real material comes up. And those are the things that this work can do relatively gently. It's not using drugs, it's not using, it's you're in charge. All I'm doing is just gently navigating, that I don't have to do too much, so that as a facilitator, used to be a practitioner or whatever you want to call me, it's sitting back and letting you lead the way, which takes a lot of pressure off of the therapist. It's much less, and also it allows you to be step back a little bit more, and start to feel something, kind of get more like a world view. So that's what we do. That's what I do.
Well,
And it's
thank
like,
you. Yeah, that's it. That's really. I'm not surprised, that it would attract you, because it seems like a really powerful method,
yeah,
helping people, get to the real deep problems that perhaps they have been trying to fight
for a long
their
time.
lives. Yes.
Yeah. And what you know about trauma, for instance, to keep
Yes.
this objective, is whatever was going on at 7 years old was probably came into being because of something that happened at 3 years old, something that
Yes.
happened 2 years old, something
Right.
happened probably even in utero.
Right.
And you slowly work back to that. And as you work back through those things, you begin to untangle them, and you begin to see that it wasn't something about you, it's things that happened to you.
Right.
And then it becomes possible to both talk about them openly. I mean, I wasn't going to talk too much about what I discovered because I don't want to make this about me so much, but more about the method. And also I don't want to over dramatize the traumas that I went through, because in the end, there's all this talk about trauma now. It's really about the inability to bond. So what we want to do is work on the word bonding, which is why, of course, the movie is called The Bond. The documentary that we're doing right now it's about bonding. Human beings need to be connected. They need to be connected with other people, and this work does that too.
So let me ask you a couple more questions before we run out of time.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing you have learned in your life?
That I know nothing. That I know absolutely nothing, and it's fine.
Uh-huh.
You know, the James Webb telescope images just brought home for me that I grew up in a world where everyone knew everything when I was a little kid. You know, there's heaven, there's hell, there's this, there's that. We're absolutely certain we can demonize these people, we can do whatever we want to do. What I've learned is I know nothing. It's wonderful to be alive. We don't know where we are even in the universe. The universe is incomprehensible. You know, you talk about the Big Bang Theory. Well, as Luke said, my little boy, what was there before the Big Bang?
Right.
And if the universe is expanding, what's it expanding into? It doesn't answer any question.
That's
It leaves
right.
us, as if we take a moment, it leaves us as lost as anything else does. And it's okay. It's okay, because we're here. We are here, for whatever reason, however that works, however you want to describe it. So I think what I've learned is I don't know anything, and it's okay.
So my final question. So we are here. Why are you here? What is your mission? What do you see your purpose in life to be?
It's gotten pretty clear for me, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't always clear. It is to tell the truth, is to try and understand the truth. It's actually what you were talking about in the very beginning when we were doing that, you know, the curiosity,
Yes.
that, you know, that's what came up right away, you know,
Yes.
wanting to know how things
Yes.
work and why. I think the closer I can get to the truth, the more valuable what I can express becomes for other people, because it was Fellini and Bergman and Freud and Jung and so many other people that were working toward the truth that helped me to live a full, rich, and very productive life, to be a good father, a good grandfather, a good father again, and a good citizen in a country right now, as you know, in Canada, my country, your country is having its own issues, but my country is having terrible, terrible problems. And I think one of the things is to not despair, to know that the human species, if you do your homework and look, has been through terrible, terrible times, and to keep oneself as full and alive as possible, to be there for other people so that we don't make a total mess of it all, you know, that we can help each other and move forward and evolve. I believe in evolution. That I sort of, who knows for sure? I don't know anything for
right.
sure.
Well,
So,
you know, Stephen, I don't know how you feel about it, but I really wish we could live closer, because I just so enjoy talking to you.
yeah, me too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So
A
thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being on this program. When anyone listens to this podcast, I would like them to please check the subscribe button. There's no obligation for you when you do that, but it really helps me in terms of gaining a bigger audience. And I just want to say that next week we have another incredible guest. It will be Michael Levin, Professor Michael Levin, an American developmental and synthetic biologist at Tufts University, where he's the Vannevar Bush Distinguished Professor. Levin is director of the Allen Discovery Center at Tufts University and Tufts Center for Regenerative and developmental biology. He's also co-director of the Institute for Computationally Designed Organisms. Levin is co-editor-in-chief of the Bioelectricity Journal and founding associate editor of Collective Intelligence. So please, if you have a chance, tune in. And again, thank you, Stephen. Bye for now.
My pleasure. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.